I am John Corey. I'm the host today. We have a distinguished panel with varying backgrounds from planning to finance and development and things in between. I'm going to have each of them introduce themselves. For the camera angle, I'll probably sit down for most of this, but I might pop up a lot because I want to be able to see you too. Clearly, I'm not shy. I don't want you to be shy. This is your opportunity to get things asked that you want to hear. And if you don't quite get the answer you were looking for or you have more detail, everybody here is available after the session or in the stand so you can continue the conversation. That whispering's on mic. It's all fully recorded. That's cool.
That's fine.
And no tapping on the tables, no sort of whatever you do to make noises because the microphone pick up everything. Anything else for the panelists? Cool. Let's start here. Introduce who you are, your company, and your sort of focus today.
So my name is Paul Watson. I head the origination team at a company called Blend Network. We're a bridging and development finance lender. It's peer-to-peer for the most part, and we're really driven by deal size between 100,000 at the lower end up to circa 3 million at the upper end, and typically regional deals rather than London deals.
John Howard, a property developer and investor. Been at it 40 years and still doing it.
Cool.
Ritchie Clapson, I'm a chartered structural engineer by profession. I've been in the property industry not quite as long, 35 years.
John might be saying I do look younger.
You do look a lot younger, yeah. Maybe it's just the angle. So I've been in the industry 35 years. Myself and my business partner Ian, who sat here in the front row, we actually train people to be developers, and particularly we specialise in business owners and taking them on a journey to financial freedom through development.
My name is Chris Whitehouse. I am a chartered planning and development surveyor and accredited expert in planning policy and planning law. I'm managing director of a planning practice called Next Phase, and my time is split between preparing major applications for developers and working in the high courts and public inquiries as an expert witness.
Cool. So, if someone already has property experience and they have been doing it as an investor, but now they want to take on a planning project. Assume they already own the land or something, so we don't have to get into that yet. What should they do to start? What's their sort of entry point?
No planning bit?
I can certainly jump in.
Go on then.
Okay, so it's all about mitigating risk. So the planning at the minute is so volatile that you need to make sure that you've assessed not just the best case scenario, but the worst case scenario as well. The nature of decision making by local authorities at the minute provides a situation where you have no guarantee that you will get a planning permission.
Painful.
It is painful. The organisation of local authorities is at its worst in terms of decision making, management of planning applications, etc. And that means that when you're preparing a planning application, you need to make sure that your submission answers the questions before they're asked. The ability, which was there when I first started in practice, to pick up the phone to your local planning officer, discuss a parcel of land, try and work out what could be done, what can't be done, what the issues would be, is not available anymore. So when you submit a planning application these days, it needs to be well-rounded. You need to understand the implications of any planning policy of your local area, using your local authority's website to do so. And you need to have a strong understanding of what you can reasonably expect to achieve. Because if you've done the thorough preparation and you're, as I've said, answer the questions before they're asked, it means that any negative decision you get from a local authority has the basis on which to be challenged within an appeal. But my advice would be that you need to do due diligence. You need to be highly sceptical of your own proposed planning application, and you need to make sure that you're answering the difficult questions of yourself first.
So just a little background of me. So I was the chair of the localism group for the only urban localism pilot. It was basically the area near the Shard. So I chaired that group. And one of the things that comes out in the conversation is the local council, the local planning information is published. What is this document that they should be looking at in their local area?
So go into your local planning authority's website, go into the planning section, and then go into the planning policy section. And if you're lucky, your local authority will be up to speed, and they'll have an interactive map that allows you to sort of Google Earth down into the site in question, and you'll be able to pick up the policies that are relevant to the type of development you want to do. You can read them, you can prepare an application on that basis. If as most authorities are not, it's not up to speed, then unfortunately you're going to have to read a fairly long scanned-in PDF copy of your local authority's planning policy. And you need to cherry pick the policies that are relevant to the land in question, and you need to make sure as far as you possibly can that you're according with those policies. But they're all available online.
Better still, they could ring you.
That would be ideal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Please feel free to do that.
A couple of things I would say from what you've said from a developer's point of view is when you put a planning application in, always assume it's going to go to appeal. Always assume they're not going to accept it. That way, make sure that you haven't left any stone unturned ready for the appeal. So be appeal ready. Would you say that's a sensible approach?
I think it's essential.
Yeah, essential. And 50% of appeals are upheld? Is that about what it is these days, or a bit, bit more?
There's a bit of a caveat there to say that appeals that have been prepared by a professional sits at about 50%. The appeals that are sort of chucked in as a free go without that professional expertise sits a bit low. It's about 25.
Yeah. So you've got a really good chance on appeal, especially these days, unless it's bonkers. And if you put in a bonkers application, it's your own fault. You've got to put in something you've got to make it as easy as possible for yourself in life, anything, to be successful. So don't be so ambitious that it's just going to fail because on density or something simple like that. You're better off to go lower, get it, and then try and go back and get a bit more than you are to fail, because it's expensive.
That's an important tip. Get planning approved and then try to up what you want.
Yeah.
Rather than go for the whole thing the first time and get it shot down. But in particular, I want to highlight something that we just heard. The councils are obligated to publish what they want before you apply. Now, it doesn't mean all of them follow the law, therefore there's a part of the appeal process that allows for that. But they will tell you, this is what we want on these streets in this area.
Yeah.
The type of housing, the type of commercial. So they've already told you, here's my recipe of things I want. Which one do you want to fill in? So when you submit your application, you want to show how you're matching what they've said they want. Because people can object, but they can't object and be held up, be approved when the objection's against the council policy. That's not a valid objection.
I think I'd say as well strongly, as John said, you need someone like this. Don't try and do it yourself, because you've got to read all these documents and you could misinterpret them. And sometimes if you look at these, and even I'd look at them, I'm not a planning specialist, and probably like John, I've been around a long time, but I'd have someone like this on board that I can go into the detail and they can interpret it, because you say they don't always follow the rules.
They don't
and
always follow the rules.
They interpret how they want to interpret. And the most important thing as a new developer, you can waste a huge amount of money and time trying to interpret these things yourself if you're not a specialist. You don't need to do that. Development is all about leverage and bringing the specialists in. The other thing I'd add to it is have two options. You talk about the scenario, John, about if you've already got the site, you bought the site. Well, if you're going to buy a site, have two exits. Yep. So have two options that you can always get out. If you've got a slightly controversial one, or as John said, a smaller scheme that you can build on, make sure that exit stacks up. Always have two exits. If you don't have two exits, you're going to be in trouble.
I think the other thing to remember is don't go into battle with the planners. Try and work with them. And it isn't easy sometimes, I know, but try and work with them. Make life easy for yourself. Don't, if you're pushing an open door, don't make it so, hard to open. If they're pushing it open for you, go with them a little bit. Don't try and fight them every turn and think you can beat them legally and everything else, which you might be able to do, but it can take a long, long time. So try and work with them as much as you can.
So 1 second. So as a lender, do you lend on sites before people own them? As a lender?
We don't before people own them.
Okay, so just I'm picking this apart for everybody in the room. So you won't be able to get finance on something you don't own yet.
But you can get finance subject to the planning permission.
Correct.
You can say, look, we will give you an offer. Here's the offer if you get planning permission.
Absolutely.
Right. Great. Yeah.
So you can get finance lined up so that if you have planning, through crowdfunding, but not as a lender, through crowdfunding and the equity side, you can get the crowd to fund all of your planning costs, including his fees. So if you don't have the money to seek planning, but you have a viable site as far as you can tell, and you want to hire people that know what they're doing, the crowd will fund that if it actually makes sense. So there is a way to raise funding for a site you don't own to obtain planning with the crowd accepting 100% loss if you actually don't achieve planning after the appeal.
But add to that, one has got to be careful. If you get planning permission, you don't own that site and you haven't got an option or agreement signed up on that, that planning permission is for the benefit of the vendor.
Yep.
And the vendor then might suddenly have that planning uplift gain. And I've seen people fall into that trap. Make sure you've got it sewn up, you've got an option agreement or whatever. The other thing you've got to look at as well is an option agreement's great. In any legal battle, the person with the deepest pockets generally wins. Okay? Yeah. So be very careful in any option agreement that you sign up and play your cards very close to your chest. Yep. A student asked me yesterday, he said, well, what if I actually put in a planning application? Will the vendor find out? And I said, there's a very good chance they will find out.
Absolutely. Anybody can put a planning application on any property, can't they, I believe?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's nothing to stop you putting a planning application on my house or your house.
The difference is you have to serve notice on the owner. So when you fill in an application form, you have to legally serve notice through.
One thing I would say about options, everyone's obsessed with options. Far better, I think, in many ways, is to buy it subject to planning permission.
To exchange with
subject to planning permission with the condition that you'll get the plan that you put in for. Now, the clever people or the clever lawyers at the end of that says to my client's satisfaction. That's the trick. Because even if you get the planning permission, you might find the market's done that. You don't want to buy it anymore. Yep. So always try and have a way out if you can. Always.
So we had some hands up for a question. I think you have one.
Is there a case to use a planning consultancy which specializes in a particular local area as opposed to using?
So let me
understand the politics in that council.
So let me repeat the questions before the answers because of the camera. So should you use a planning consultant who is more geographically focused? I think is the essence of the question.
For me, I tend to use one or two across the country, but I can understand why that would be more useful sometimes if they know the people. It may well be that they used to work for the council and now they've gone on their own. And that can always work against you though, because they're going to be the council can be a bit bitter about them. So I think you just want to work with someone that you trust and you understand and you work well together and they're doing their best for you.
I think I'd add to that, we had a conversation yesterday, Christopher and I, it used to be more important. I think it's changed and there's reasons it has changed.
I'll keep this short. Since the recession, the sort of lifer career of a planning officer within an authority changed considerably. Public sector cuts meant that the ability for a planning consultant to work for a council for 30 years changed. Most local authorities around the country, particularly felt within very urban areas such as Greater London, are made up with young contracted planning consultants, locum consultants and consultants from overseas. They're not in the job for a long period of time. So your ability to create relationships with them is not as strong as when that ability was there maybe 5-10 years ago. Secondly, planning policy is centrally based now. The National Planning Policy Framework has centralised most of the focus on the way planning law works. So your ability to be in an office in the West Midlands, for example, and prepare an application in Newcastle is very, very simple in comparison to how it was maybe 10 or 15 years ago. So I think I completely concur. I think pick the consultant that you're comfortable with and don't prioritise trying to find someone local. Pick the essentially the professional.
Cool. We had another question right there.
Yeah, if you're going against policy, then do the support of the neighbours matter? Because I've got a site where it's like more dense than would normally be allowed, but all the neighbours are supportive because it redevelops an eyesore.
So the question is, the policy says one thing which you're trying to not be consistent with, and the neighbors are supportive of the application, in your opinion, so would that likely succeed?
I think the neighbourhood weight in particular as a consultee doesn't carry any particular weight in terms of the way the planning will be interpreted. What you can do though is consolidate that neighbourhood good feeling and funnel it towards your local ward councillor. Your ward councillor can call in an application to a committee, and in that scenario, ladies and gentlemen, just to be clear, the people making the decisions on your planning application are not trained planning consultants, they are councillors. So it's about using sentiment of your political position. If you're able to funnel it towards your ward councillor, bring to their attention, and they make the decision, then you're more likely to get a planning permission that is contrary to policy than you are through the planning officer themselves.
Okay, so a lot of decisions, is it fair to say a lot of decisions made it by the planning department, and then they either can choose or the councillors can choose to have it moved to the ward council?
Yeah, a councillor can call in any application depending on a number of grounds, predominantly neighbour objections or neighbourhood support, or anything that may take their fancy.
Having said that, if they recommend the application, it's more than likely that it will go through.
Correct. You do have the opportunity to defend your case or support your case within that committee meeting.
Yeah.
Statistically, if an officer is recommending approval, the committee will support that approval. If the officer is recommending a refusal, they will support it. Unless you have a very good professional able to represent you within that 3 to 5 minute chance you get to speak, in which you can flip the chances around. But statistically, that's correct.
Okay, so slightly time-wise moving it forward. So let's assume we have achieved planning somehow. So now we're going to talk about development, which is part of the topic for today. And what does it mean to essentially develop the site that has planning, whether it's finance, construction management, things like that. So why don't we start with you? Any comments of like, here's a site, got planning for it. What are the steps that people should be doing, either even before planning or after?
I think the key is getting the right people around you, and it's how you operate in development. People have come to me over the years, and all the years I've done this, and say, I want to get into development. It's very lucrative. It is one of the few industries, and I've been in loads and loads of different businesses, that you can actually get into and leverage, and you can get all the money you want coming towards you. The difficulty in the people that make mistakes in this industry, and they're costly. You can make a lot of money in this business. You can also lose a lot of money in this business. Okay, and the people that make the mistakes tend to actually get involved down at the coalface where you don't want to. You need to act at the top. You need to be at the top, and you need to get a professional team around you that support that team. And you need to use your skill sets that you have at a high level. So you need to come in as a chief exec officer or managing director over the top of the business and bring beneath you a credible team of people, be it a project manager, be it a planning consultant, be it an architect, and you then liaise with them. Generally, if you get this right, you can set up a project manager beneath you, and your project manager can help work with all the other people beneath that. If you come from a background of HMOs or buy-to-lets, probably quite a few of you have been at the coalface trying to organise electricians and plasterers, and they don't turn up on all those things. You don't want to be there. That's not a place you want to be. And in construction, because there's much more money involved in development, you can actually afford to pay fairly high-level professional people to come in and manage and do the heavy lifting for you. So you act as a CEO at the top. You use your organisational, management skills, people skills, decision-making skills, and you run a business. It just happens to be a property development business. That's the difference. If you work at that high level and have all these people advising you, and we strongly recommend alongside you, you have a non-exec advisor, and there's a bit of a subtlety of how that works, you can actually go in and just run another business. And as an example, we often use, if you can picture this, picture Richard Branson. He goes into all sorts of businesses. He doesn't have all the expertise. So if Richard Branson wanted to design a new table, and he said, I don't like this table, I'm going to come up with a new arrangement. And he got together a load of people. He'd bring in a specialist manufacturer, he'd bring in a specialist designer, he'd bring a funder, a distributor, and he'd be the CEO. And you wouldn't bet against him doing it, would you? Because you think he's got CEO skills and he just transfers them. If you want to get into development, my advice would be is you work at that level and bring beneath you all the professional team.
So let me transition this slightly. So to the lender, if there's a professional team there, what's your view when it comes to that proposal coming to your desk?
It makes it a lot easier. So one of the things we look for immediately is experience. If the team behind the project is hugely experienced, if John brought a deal to me, for example, I'd be very comfortable that he has the ability. No problem. Or Ritchie, you as well.
That was a second best, wasn't it? John?
Only because I'm closer to him.
Suffolk,
no
okay. But if it would give us a huge amount of confidence that the guys behind the scheme have the ability to create the value over the period of time that is the construction phase. So experience would be one of the big things that a lender would look for just to mitigate our risk, because that's how debt works. It's all about getting our money back.
So if you're out there and you don't have experience, your job is to join forces with people that do.
Buy it in. Buy the experience in.
Yep. So do not think of your first project as how you're going to retire. Think of your first project as it's like a first date. It's a bigger process. you want to get to your second, third, fourth project to build that track record. If you have to buy the team in, buy the experts in, and you don't personally make tons of money, but you have a clean track record, and the lender knows you.
I think you're wrong.
Good.
And I'll tell you why I think you're wrong. You must not get, this guy will not lend you the money if you're not making a good net profit after all costs.
So he misunderstood what I said. Everybody on the team's going to
Sure,
make
I
a lot
did.
of money, but you don't make all the money. You share it out, you spend money on experts.
Not what-
It has
what
to
you
be
said.
profitable. But you're not necessarily going to make a king's ransom on that one project to you. The project will be profitable because he won't lend on it otherwise.
But what Paul will want is certain numbers. So he might want 20% on GDV or a percentage on cost, 25% on cost. And unless you're making that profit, and this is where John's coming from, unless you're making profit, they're not going to lend you the money because development is tough. Okay, if you're going to go out and make a six-figure sum, I mean, how many people, show of hands, if you made £150,000 next year, would that change your lives?
Show of hands. Okay.
So the rest of you are lying. Okay, for most people,
Or they're very successful.
oh, they're very successful.
So you're in the wrong session.
Okay, but come on, seriously, if you're going to go out and make, I'm talking about making money, not earning. Okay, if you've got a job, you earn money. If you make £150,000 by not doing a lot, don't expect it to be easy, and expect there to be tough times along the way. You know, the proverbial's going to hit the fan. You've got to deal with things. There's going to be tough decisions. And so you've got to have that profit that drives you. Just to finish, John, so I know, so we get to the point here, is that unless you've got that big end goal, that big end profit, you're going to walk away or potentially walk away. And people like Paul that's going to come in and his investors want to see that you're driven to get that project. And you're not going to walk away from 150,000. But if you only had 20,000 in it, you might walk away.
Profit and money is all relative. So if you're making 150,000 on investing £2 million, then you don't want to be doing it because not enough profit. If you're investing £1 million and you make a net profit of 150,000, how much is that? It's percentage-wise.
15.
15%.
There we
It
go.
woke
Still-
him up then, suddenly he was having a kip.
I don't do figures. Someone else does them for me. I'm spoiled. So that's not enough. You've got to be at least making 20% net.
The return's got to offset the risk. To make
Absolutely.
that decision.
So the project has to be 20% or higher is what we're hearing.
Yep.
Okay? And again, that's not you keep yourself the whole 20%. You want a team who's incentivized.
No.
So
You,
that-
no. You need to be making the 20%. These other guys and girls are working for you.
Yeah.
They're working for you. Your profit needs to be
So
20%.
you don't share the profit with anyone?
No. 20% for you or more.
Yeah.
You're paying them. They're not taking any risk.
No, they're the fees.
They're the professionals. They're the professional boys.
So once I,
You've got
so-
the personal guarantee on the line.
You've got your arse is on the line. You're the one with the PG.
Yeah.
And these
Okay.
boys will take it off you if you don't make it.
I think the other thing, John, just to add to it, in terms of agreeing with John here, what you might do is...
agreeing with John here, yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
agreeing with John here. This John
name.
here. You just sit back,
Good
mate.
name.
The thing is, you might, on your first project, which I'm going to appease you now, because this works for you as well, okay? So we don't get an argument here today. We don't want any fighting, do we? No. So just think about it, okay? If you need some experience, I talked about a non-exec advisor, bringing someone alongside you that you could bring in that might assist you on your first deal, okay? Maybe you say to them, but maybe you find a retired developer. So maybe when John and I have had enough and we're getting a bit bored, you can wheel us out of an old people's home and bring us in, and we will advise you. We'll have a coffee, you buy us coffee and cake, and we'll help you out. And maybe you're going to give us 30% cut of the deal, maybe on your first deal to get the experience, okay? That would come out the 20%.
That would
so
come out the
you're
20%.
right, yeah?
You're-
We're
you're
happy
right.
with that, but the rest is all fees.
So we had a question over here and he's been patiently waiting. Do you still have it?
Yeah, of course, yeah, I do. So I have a huge development in Midlands at the moment.
So you have a...
A huge development in Midlands
Yeah.
going on, and I have to organise everything, including finance and
Yeah.
professionals and everybody. Now I've spoken with the owner of the vendor of the building. Obviously the agreement is that either we go for one developer company that will contribute, and they will obviously make a conversion from a factory to an apartment, or we're going to go for smaller subcontractors, and then we have one person. Yeah, exactly. So my question is, which one is better? Is it to take one big company that can provide everything, or go for smaller companies, smaller subcontractors, and then have a one managing person that obviously guide them.
Okay, so just to summarize, so do you use what I would call in America, a general contractor oversees the whole thing,
Yes.
or you deal with what might be subcontractors,
Yes.
and then you have to do all that?
Contractors that obviously they know what they're doing, they know their profession.
Yeah.
And they do this,
Yeah.
bit by bit.
John's got an
The
answer.
first question, that question really, I initially should be to this gentleman here, because he'll I know what he's going to say.
Yeah, if you're
Hopefully.
if you're using a main contractor with a good track record of delivering similar schemes, it's going to make your funding a lot easier. So guys like me that give you a hard time would be a lot more comfortable if the team you're proposing to use has got the track record. If you're proposing the latter, breaking it up and packaging up all the subcontracts, we're going to want to see a lot of experience.
Yeah. It's a very, what I would say, depending how big the scheme is, obviously, but if it's a big scheme, you want a schedule of works, you want to know, you want a schedule of works done by a building surveyor, you want to go out to tender, and you need to do the job professionally and properly. You should do that at any level, really, to be honest with you. But if you are an experienced developer, perhaps you're getting your hands dirty, you're doing the footings yourself, then yeah, you can sub it out because you're there on site all the time. But if not, what are you going to do?
So-
You've got to pull it all together.
It's not easy.
Not
Related
easy.
to what you just said, and also I think what you were saying, and we talked about this on the phone, what type of contracts are you expecting to see?
JCT,
Yeah.
NEC,
Yeah.
Okay, so
a main
a
contract.
lot of people who own their own investment properties don't know what this is. So can you, Paul or John, explain what you mean by these contracts?
So a JCT contract is a joint claims tribunal contract. It protects the borrowing entity with the main contract. It protects the ability of the SPV, which is ultimately any. Let me start again. Sorry. When you come to a lender to ask for money, one of the things we'll say to you is, can you set up a vehicle, a limited company, to buy the property and undertake the development in? That means from us, we can take security over that vehicle. That security is called a debenture over the company. That company will contract out on a main contract basis to a contracting arm. For example, the wine rack, I think you use Carter's.
Carter's, yep.
Yep, probably under a JCT.
Was, yep.
Under a JCT. Within that, it will have specific provisions such as time frame, schedule of works,
Penalties.
etc. That will make your funding, any funder look at that and say, we underwrite the entire deal.
And give them confidence.
Exactly.
So this is key as you go from like just redecorating an HMO to being a developer and using development finance. Those of you that have a card that I handed out, those tiering of capital, the more that you are professional, the more that you understand JCT contracts and schedules of work and full detail and all the rest of it, the more you can attract capital to your deals. The less you do that, the more likely you're going to have to pay for the whole thing out of your pocket, and it's probably going to be a nightmare.
Can I add something just to the gentleman's question here? Because you said it's a large deal, okay? A single contract, JCT contract, lump sum contract, and some arrangement is a really good way to work, particularly for your first deal, so you get control over it. There is a process which you can still do under JCT, which is management contracting, and you can have a project manager which will run all the individual packages, okay? Yeah, that's what I thought you might be talking about. That can actually be more cost effective for you in the long run, but it has an open-ended element of risk because you're not letting the individual packages. So you might have a package for windows, kitchens, fit out, foundations, lots of individual packages, okay? Now, if you're trying to fund that through someone like Paul and some investors and you're fairly early on, that's probably going to be very difficult because you have an open-ended contract, okay, to do that, because you don't know the final sum until you get there. There are advantages in doing a management contracting in terms it gives you the ability to develop a design and a process. So some big national projects, big hospital projects are often done in that way because sometimes they're redefining the brief as they go along. If you're doing what I'd call a pretty traditional type of development, if you're converting something into residential, try and get a single price lump sum contract because it's going to be much easier to fund. And just to add, finally, John, one thing to add to it, don't ever, and this is for everyone out there, do not go to a point where you're going to do a management contracting into individual subcontractors unless you have experience. And the reality is if you're sat here, you don't have experience. Do not do that because if you try and manage all these contractors, you'll probably die in the process.
Can I just say, what you're suggesting is fine for very, very experienced developers.
Absolutely.
Now, I've been at it 40 years. How many times do I do that?
None.
None.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is it's Russian roulette. I'm not into, you might think, oh, well, you know, you do some development and so on, you're into risk. I'm not into risk. I want to make sure any risk I take is calculated. And I'm not into Russian roulette. Click, click, bang. No. So everything I do is fixed price, schedule of works, fixed price contract, and even then it can go wrong. I've had a development at the moment, £2.5 million development, builder's gone bust on me. Now, you know when a builder's going to go bust, because when you have a valuation every month for the builder, he does the valuations done, to how much they've spent that month. He wanted 150,000, and my surveyor, valuer, whatever, said, John, it's 75. What do you want to do? Do you want to pay him 150, or would you want? I said, no. I said, start looking for someone else, because they're about to go bust. And the other thing, the skips aren't emptied. So when your skips aren't emptied on a site, you know that they haven't got the money to, or the kitchens don't arrive on time, or so, you know, even with a JCT contract, even at the experience I've got, it can go wrong. The trick is I know what to do when it does go wrong.
Yep. Can I add to it as well? What I'm suspecting you're getting into development for, those that want to get into development, are two things. You want to be rich in money, so you want some wealth. And the other thing I think you really do want is time. Okay? That's why most people who are in development get into it. They want that time. Because, you know, you can get money, you can earn as much money as you want. But there's only so much time, and we run out of time. And the wealthiest people in the world are always looking for experience and time. And if you go down this single contract route and leverage anything out, and go back to that model I said earlier, I don't even want to talk to the contractor in the nicest possible way. I've got a project manager to do that. I want to go and do something else. I want to go and get my hair cut or something like that.
Bit ambitious, if you don't mind me saying.
Well, yeah, but I mean, everyone needs ambition, don't they? This is what we're talking about. So it's important to have time in there as well. So try and make sure you use leverage in everything you do.
So, and just remember, you're here to be in development. You're not here to be running a building site.
So kind of building on what we just discussed now. So you mentioned, or refer many times to this project manager, in addition to all the other specialities that you need to work with. So where do you go and find an experienced and likable and professional project manager?
Well, all of those things?
Sorry, yeah. Of all the other functions we're talking about, they're all specific, right? You go and look it up. There's a planning consultant this, there's an architect that, there's, you know, all the other specialties are well defined. Project manager, unless you go to Arrow, right? Or Savills, or some, you know, almost organization, you pay an hour
Okay,
for it.
okay. So how do you find a project manager?
Can I say one more thing? Because
Okay.
in addition to time and money, I want to learn, right? And if I sign one contract and it's all signed off, I don't learn anything myself. I want to learn as well for the next time, and I can do that by working with a project manager under my arm. And this that's kind of the add-on then, is the better way to do a joint venture, right? So here's another person, very experienced, come with me shoulder to shoulder, and we do it together. I learn, I share the profits, and you are my project manager, maybe more in spirit than in reality. I know that's kind of broadening a bit. But
So one question is how to find a competent project manager.
Yeah.
The second question, which is rather different, is if your goal is to learn and to eventually graduate to being the project manager, I'm not sure why you want to, but if you wanted to go down that path, what's the best way to learn? So let's deal with the first question.
Okay, in terms of finding a project manager, no different process in terms of finding an architect. You want to find one that I think you said that you like, you get on with, and whatever, etc., etc., etc. Just get out there in the networking environment, whatever that is, and speak to people. Okay, you'll find someone out there. So be project managers downstairs somewhere, wandering around, or go to your local networking, or look them up, Google them, or speak to another developer. If you spoke to me, you spoke to John, we might tell you who some project managers are in your area, and then go and have a chat with them, and have a chat with several of them, and get to know them, to get their experience. And don't bang the table because of the mics, okay? So get out and start speaking, and then go and ask to speak to some of their developers. So if you met a project manager and he was working with John, give John a call and say, how are they getting on? What are they like? So find them in that respect, and you've got to get on with them. You've got to click with them, okay? In terms of learning, if I did that, that's fine. I don't know why you want to be a project manager. I can't think of anything worse, okay? Because that is not a leverage of your time. On a project where I could earn £200,000, I might pay my project manager 15 to 20. That's peanuts. Let him do that. He's fine. He loves it. So if you want to learn, shadow them. Just shadow them, okay? But don't, just one thing, don't JV with them. Don't JV with anyone unless you absolutely have to.
You don't need to. If you've got the money, you don't need to. One thing, very briefly, I would say two things. One, a building surveyor will do the same job as project manager, sort of.
Yes.
So a building surveyor, much easier to find. Okay, a building surveyor. Project manager is more going to be on site more often and so on. A building surveyor will pull it all together for you, do the schedule of works, do the valuations for the bank, and then you can get them to come on site every week to monitor what's happening. So perhaps not as hands-on as a project manager, but easier to find. And the other thing, I am rolling out some mentoring, which is about developing and charging a percentage to hold people's hand during the process. So that's another angle that you may or may, but you still need a building surveyor, even if you were to help me. I was to help you.
You wouldn't want to be a project manager, though, would you?
No.
Why would you? Would anyone want to be a project manager?
Can't think of the worse.
No, don't do it, guys. Seriously, come on.
Cool. So next question, we'll go here.
So I understand that you should be leveraging other people's time, so like planning consultants, construction companies and so on. But if you're starting out, what should be your priority? Should you be able to at least identify sites and see the feasibility and then get everyone else to essentially do everything else? What should I be doing right now?
So
what does someone starting out bring to the table?
Yeah.
So then, because obviously you said we should bring a power team in, but there's something you've got to bring to the table for them to work with, right? So what's that initial thing that we need to bring? Is it raising of capital? Is it a site? Like, what do we need to do to get going?
So how to start is effectively if a cold start and you're trying to figure out what the value add is that you bring to the table.
Yeah.
John's got an answer.
Okay, so thanks. So so you're looking for a site in which to develop.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a number of ways you can go and find a site. You don't need to spend £7,500 that someone did, or 15 people did, I think, on a 2-day course with someone the other day, which is unbelievable. I told them the whole lot in half an hour. So what you need to do, there's a number of ways of finding sites. Obviously, the ones that are on the market currently, that's the first thing. The secondly, go on to the planning portals and find out what's got planning, what hasn't got planning yet, but it's going to get planning. And more importantly, go back a year and see what's got planning, and then ring them up and say, it's all on, it's all public. You can see what's happened, see what they've done. They might not have done nothing with the site. So that's a really good way of finding sites. The other thing is bridging companies. They'll tell you, bridging companies, that they never have any problems. They never ever repossess anything. Well, let me tell you, it's a load of old, you know what. Get hold of them. You might well find they've got a number of site land deals that they've repossessed, and they want to do something with. They might even lend you the money at a lower interest rate than they were to get it shifted off their books. So there's lots of ways of finding deals. But you're right, you have to drive it forward. You have to find that site first. Then all this other stuff comes in. And very, very quickly on square footage, work out what square footage you can get on a site, times it by what it's worth. So start at the end and work backwards. And then you know what you can afford to pay for it.
Can I just add it from a
Yeah, I think you
from
should,
a- from
because
a-
there's a couple things from this end.
from a power team perspective, from your sort of professional power team, I'm interested in you paying my fees. So my only real interest is you bringing a site to the table that needs to be appraised, so you can understand what needs planning permission, and then to essentially provide the planning services in that regard. So in terms of what you need to bring to the table, the conversation, I think, with your team to a certain extent only starts when you have a viable site available to take forward. You know, because our interest starts and finishes, I may be cynical, but it's true, with providing you a service, you paying our fees, and then you cracking on with the rest of your scheme.
So to add to that, from experience with another friend of mine and also working with Suffolk Council's planning department, you can read the planning documents for a council. So wherever you live, read the documents. They'll tell you what the council thinks they want. And you start to get the lingo, you start to get the language. You can go to the actual planning meetings that are open to the public and hear the applications and the objections, all of it. So you're starting to learn the dance that everybody's having when they do that. And then you're starting to see who the planning consultants are that are active in the area. You can go online, as John said, and see all the applications, the rejected ones, the approved ones. You can then look them up and say, did anyone ever do a deal with that site, or is it still the way it was, which is the point John made. So there's a reasonable amount of information that can get you up to speed at your fingertips.
Can I add to it? Obviously, you've got to find a site. Okay. Before that, you've got to be educated. Now, John said, well, you could do something in a half hour. I don't agree with that. I think you've got to get properly educated. Okay. If you're a hospital consultant and earning 100,000 a year, You take about 14 years to get trained. What makes you think you could go and do development and earn 100,000 plus a year and not get trained? And I've seen I picked up the pieces of some people that's tried to get into this too soon and lost a lot of money. They've bought sites which they should never have bought. They got involved in sites. They pulled together people they should never have pulled together. A lot of people, when I first got into property networking meetings, and go back 20 years, they didn't exist. 10 years, they didn't exist. And I got to some of these networking meetings and people used to say, oh, property is such a lovely industry. Everyone's so friendly. No, they're not, okay? There's a lot of money to be made in this industry, and there's a bunch of sharks out there. And I've seen many people that's come to me and said, oh, we're looking at this site. Oh, I've been told it's a great site. The agent's really nice. Of course he is. He's selling the damn site, you know. And you end up getting in a situation where you get caught out. Do not expect, even before you think about buying sites, to get into development. I'm sorry, but be a bit controversial, but don't expect to come in here without some form of education, whatever that is, because you will trip up and you will lose a lot of money. I could introduce you to a student who lost £200,000, got completely shafted. That's life-changing, but for the wrong reasons. But find that site is the first point, and yeah, absolutely agree, other stuff will come.
Can I just say, what I was saying was that in half an hour I can show you everything that guy taught you in 2 days of where to go and find land deals, because that's what the course was about. Yes, you need some education. Good. No, you don't need to pay a fortune for it. One day, get cracking, start getting out there, finding things, get advice to people whether to carry on or not with it, but get out there. You'll learn far more getting out there, looking at deals, learning yourself and getting it checked by someone than you will course after course after course after course, thousands of pounds. It's not necessary in my view.
Okay, so we're going to run out of time fairly soon. We're going to have a couple more questions.
Just a quick one.
One second. The lady's had her hand up behind you.
Just where do you get that sort of education?
Well, two people right here sell education. Okay, and I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm saying you should definitely talk to them.
Fine.
There are some others, and as John's highlighted, some are less than competent, or they're charging a lot for their competence.
The one thing I would say is when you have these educators, and there are a lot of educators around, ask them what have they done themselves. Because I'm telling you, if they've bought 3 or 4 properties in, you know, it's rubbish. To teach or to educate, you need to have the experience.
So experience matters. That guy?
Yeah, how much of education do you think one would need to be a developer?
Depends where you start, where you're starting from, but I think you need to know everything you don't know. Now, if that makes sense, okay?
How much money would you place on it?
Well, I would place as much as I needed to on it to get the best that I could, okay? So if I'm going to go out there, and there are a lot of education out there, and there's a lot of good stuff, okay? And as John says here, there's a bit of bad stuff as well, so be very careful. And I totally agree with John.
Mostly bad, in my view. And I've just come into it in the last year. Mostly bad. Not on this panel, I have to say, but mostly bad.
John and I have been around a long time, as you can see. I mean, you know, him obviously a lot longer.
Yeah,
but
I'm a lot older.
But go for someone that's got experience. There's a lot of good education there. What have you got to spend? Well, I would spend as much as I could afford to spend with the right person. I'm not interested in someone who's going to do, I totally agree with John, a bit more and a bit more and a bit more and a bit more. Course junkies.
How much?
How much would I spend? I would spend, if I was going to spend on education to earn £100,000, I'd spend at least 10.
10?
Yeah. Well, why do you think? Okay, let me ask you this then. You're going to go out.
What you're going to teach for 10,000, he has given me a salary for about whatever.
Okay, we're going to go to the next question. Have that debate afterwards. So, right here, and then we're going over there. Go ahead.
So, it's about offsite construction. Modular homes.
Okay. Offset construction modular homes.
Looks like they're coming up.
Mm-hmm.
And we are looking into a project. We'd find the land. We were thinking of going to the modular side. But once I want to resell this property, what is the finance option in there? Is the finance easier or getting easier?
So let's pass it more to the finance guy.
So I've never funded a development scheme that's modular. A lot of lenders can't get their heads around yet. You're absolutely right. A lot of lenders can't get their heads around them. It will happen. It will become more mainstream, but we're not quite there yet. And the reason is because you need something called a forward payment bond, because they're being built somewhere else. You're not putting brick on a site that a lender has a first charge on. So they're being built in a factory in Eastern Europe or somewhere else.
Even in England, they're doing it.
Yeah. I'm not saying we wouldn't do it. I'm saying we haven't yet, but I need to understand the exit. I need to make sure they're mortgageable at the end. So when you come to sell those units,
the point of your question is, how do you get the buyer to get financed so you can exit?
The question is, will building societies lend on modular properties? Because if building societies won't lend, that's the retail market. That's what you're trying to do. So if they won't lend, that's the question you need to ask. So you need to check that they've got BRE permission from the British Research, the Building Research Establishment. That's the first thing you need to know. The second thing you need to know is whether building societies have they don't be the first. Never be the first. Let some other mug do it, and then if they've been successful, then you do it. Because why take the risk? You can build traditionally for no more money than you can for modular. The only thing about modular, it's quicker. Yeah. Really, that's it. So why take the risk?
So the exit risk is the issue for the lender. The exit risk is the issue for you.
Yeah. So it's two risks either end.
So next question was over here.
Just to add, you can go on the Council for Mortgage Lenders website and it will tell you all the building societies, what they will lend against and not lend against.
Yeah.
Sorry. That's good.
Sorry, this is the same question going back to the finance side. How much do we have to average to bring to the table? How much percentage of the total we like to see, like, to make sure that we have skin in the
So how much capital is necessary so that you as a lender are comfortable? And I'd like to slightly twist it. Does it actually have to be all from the person?
So a lender will look at the deal and look at the risks within a deal. So we underwrite every aspect of that deal: the borrower's background, the scheme itself, how liquid the exit is when you come to market the properties, how profitable it is. So we'll underwrite absolutely everything to do with that project. When you're coming to talking about how much skin do I need to have in the game, it's linked to experience predominantly. So the more experience you have, the more money you can borrow. If you've got less experience and you haven't got a team around you that has good experience to deliver that project, you're going to find it very difficult to get funding. If you do have a good team around you that are in some way, shape or form locked into that project, then you'll be able to go up the capital stack and borrow more money. Typically, a lender will cap out at 90% loan to cost, which will mean the equity injection will be 10%. But that's pushing it very high. So that's on the basis it's profitable, really liquid exit, and it's got a borrower behind it that's got a very strong track record. In reality, at the beginning of your journey, you're not going to get anywhere close to that. So you will need to put more equity into that. And there's various ways to do it. So one of the ways to do it is obviously from your own back pocket, or you can raise it. We as a lender would want you to have some kind of skin in the game, but the equity injection from the entire capital stack, we wouldn't necessarily need just from you. You could go out and raise it, borrow it from friends and family. There's various ways you can get that cash.
So the card that I handed out, the green bits at the top, and one's called crowd equity and the other's called basically the developer your equity. Those two layers are what he looks to. He wants to see how big that is, and also how much is you versus how much is someone else, because he wants to know you're not going to walk away. At the same time, it doesn't have to be all your personal money. So, last question.
On the back of what you have said, with the project, if, for example, there is let's say someone fairly new to the development, but they have someone as a consultant that they want to be a part of the whole project, and they've got a huge experience, like 40-something years.
Like John.
Name of John Howard, yeah, excellent, yeah. Common name,
would that change anything to your own personal or the company that is borrowing the money, that you know how much the risk is? Because obviously you are, me for example, as a developer, young developer that is coming in, I want to reduce the risk, and I will not do it myself. I want to cooperate with someone that can bring as much experience as possible. I am in that position. I have been offered so far 65% of the GDP, but that is not enough. So I just would like to find out if based on what I have already said, I could be able, or I should be able to get a little bit more.
Yeah, so one of the ways would be to get that consultant in on as a shareholder of the SPV. So that's one route, and that's what I'd say to you, that we need to make sure that the construction risk is eliminated, or, well, not necessarily eliminated, but as little as possible. One of the ways would be, well, we've got a guy here with experience, he's a 20% shareholder, and that's the minimum I would ask for. He's got a personal guarantee, so he's got a material interest in actually delivering the scheme. Those are the type of tools that you could use to get us more comfortable. But typically, if he's just a consultant and it's a third party, you're paying him a salary, it's very difficult to...
Well, he doesn't want to be involved financially, but he wants to make sure that the whole project will be delivered.
Yeah, but so...
The same way as he delivered himself in a previous...
But let me highlight something. So the lender's concerned about that consultant walks away the day you can't pay them. So when the project runs out of money, that consultant's gone. If that consultant has a PG and a 20% stake in the company, and they have liability to the project now, they don't walk away as fast, even though all the money's gone.
Well, they're happy to actually contribute 25% into the whole project because it is divided into 4 stages. So one of the stages, he said he will actually finish himself as long as we have 3 other stages.
So I think at this level of detail, you need to just talk to lenders. But the point is, going in when everything's always rosy and it's always a sunny day in London, the project looks great.
It's like a new girlfriend.
Yes, exactly.
Or great, isn't it?
Or boyfriend or whatever.
First few or 3 dates are fantastic, aren't they?
But when things are going pear-shaped or going poorly, what's going to keep people showing up so they finish even though they're going to make no profit?
Good point.
So, and that's what the lender cares about.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'd like to thank you all for coming. There may be more questions. Now, can we quickly go down? Are you in a stand or available somewhere?
We're not in a stand, but I'm here for all day, so come and grab me, take my business card, give me a call.
Grab him here and then arrange a coffee son, John?
I've got a stand, but I'll stay here a little bit and take...
Well, we're going to get kicked out of here too,
Oh,
so
are we?
where's
Okay.
your stand?
I haven't got a clue. It's near the back. Because I'm a newbie, so I've got the cheap end.
He doesn't know the drill yet.
We're stand 36, and we're also speaking in Theatre 2 at 1:30.
Okay.
I'm at stand 272, which is at the end of the yellow carpet downstairs on the right. I'll be there till 2:30, and then I'll leave for another speaking engagement. So if you need me, I'll be there for 2 hours.
So come meet these people, come talk to them, get your answers, and thank you for coming.
Thanks, John.